Okay, I'm going to get started by welcoming everyone. Welcome to Tung. Nice to see everyone. Welcome to everyone joining online as well. Today is what we call our group learning program, where each Sunday and Wednesday I get together with students, gradually helping them to understand the path to enlightenment. The Buddha taught how to get to this enlightened mental state where your mind can be trained to get to the point where it's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. You no longer experience any discontent feelings. All the anger, sadness, frustration, and others is completely eliminated from the mind through training the mind. So we start each one of our classes with meditation to be able to help students to learn meditation and then build up their practice. But then afterwards, I'm going to move into a talk on today's topic, because in this program, I go chapter by chapter in our book. The book is titled Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. And over a 7-month period, I walk students through the entire book. We're in chapter 13 today. It's titled Identifying Cravings, Cultivating Craving, and Analysis of the Mind. This is where you learn about how to go in and almost surgically remove what's called craving, desire, attachment. This is the cause of all your discontent feelings. The reason why the mind experiences things like anger, sadness, frustration, and others is what's going on in one's own mind, and you can actually remove the causes and conditions that are producing this, so that way you can experience the peace and the joy. So cultivation of wisdom to be able to understand how to eliminate the causes and conditions that are producing these feelings is an important part of the path to enlightenment. You wouldn't be able to just meditate your way to enlightenment, but meditation is important, so you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment without meditation either. So that's why we start our classes with meditation. So if you'd like to join for meditation, I start with some chanting to ease us into the meditation. You guys are welcome to join in on the chants if you like. They're on a laminated sheet over there on the cabinet. You're welcome to help yourself. Yeah, help yourself and get some of the chants. Those of you guys online, you'll be able to see these on our website by going to buddhadailywisdom.com, click on free books, and then down towards the bottom, you'll see the chants there that we're going to be chanting. The chanting during the lifetime of the Buddha was used as a way to commit the teachings to memory. Every 2 weeks, his students would come together and they would recite his teachings orally. This is the way that they remembered his teachings. Where today, we don't need to chant in order to remember the teachings. We have books, audiobooks, videos, podcasts, things like this to be able to actually remember the teachings and study them. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, they didn't have those things available to them. So they used chanting, that they would recite his teachings every 2 weeks. So you can see from the origins of chanting that it was used as a learning tool, as a learning device. So there's no rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, prayer. That's not what this is. If you've been exposed to those kinds of things as part of the teachings of the Buddha, those aren't the teachings of the Buddha. He never taught any rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, or prayer. He's teaching you to train your mind and cultivate the mind. He's not teaching you to do any of those kinds of things. So when we chant, we're just helping to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. So if you choose to chant along, you'll see more benefit in your meditation. If you read the English translations of these chants, you're going to see a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha. And because of this, I don't think that the Buddha actually created these chants himself, because a Buddha wouldn't go around and say, here, chant these chants to me out of respect for me, right? This would be ego and arrogance. By the time someone's gotten to enlightenment, they don't think of themselves as being above other people. So I'm sure the Buddha didn't create these chants himself. But if you learn from a teacher how to move from anger, sadness, frustration, and all these other discontent feelings to the peace and joy that is enlightenment, and this is a permanent mental state, that by the time you get to enlightenment, it's physically impossible for you to experience things like anger and frustration and others. That if this teacher was helping you without any interest or even any expectation of anything from you whatsoever, you might have a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for this person too. So that's why I think these chants actually came from his students, because the Buddha wouldn't have created these himself, and his students would have had an enormous amount of respect for him, because not only is that the case during his lifetime, but even after his lifetime now, there's people that have an enormous amount of respect for him, of sharing the teachings to be able to help them to get free from these discontent feelings. So if you'd like to chant these along, you're more than welcome to. You'll see more benefit out of the meditation, and you'll know that it's not a rite, a ritual, ceremony, worship, or prayer. Once we're in the meditation, I'm going to provide you some guidance. You'll actually hear me instructing you and teaching you how to meditate while we're actually meditating together. Then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet and we're all meditating. Everybody here at the temple and anybody who's joining online, we'll just all be meditating together. And during that time of quietness, I'm sure you're going to hear occasional sounds. You might hear cars going by, you might hear dogs barking, bird chirping, people here might cough or sneeze or something like that. Maybe a mobile phone goes off or something of that nature. You're not going to be able to be in an environment where it's permanently quiet. The mind in the unenlightened state craves permanence. So if you're in meditation with a craving for permanent silence and you hear a sound, you'll cause your mind to be frustrated or annoyed. You live in an impermanent world, but the mind craves permanence. So you can understand when you're in meditation, you will hear sounds. That's normal. That's the way the world works. And if you don't have a craving for permanent silence, you can be quite peaceful and joyful in your meditation because you understand the world's functioning exactly the way it was intended to function, which is all this impermanence where things are constantly changing. So you will hear sounds, but you can just reside peaceful and joyful, focusing on the breath. And anytime the mind moves off the breath, you just cut that off and bring it back to the breath. You'll see how I guide you during the meditation. Then we're going to come out of the meditation with some more chanting. And that's where I'll start today's class, helping you guys to understand today's topic. In terms of your body positioning for meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught: seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you would use these different positions at different times in order to be able to help you to progress towards enlightenment. It's kind of like you would learn these particular positions and create like a tool belt for yourself so you could employ these different positions at different times as you need them in your journey to enlightenment. But oftentimes people are learning in the seated position. So I'll give you guys a little bit of guidance on the seated position. And then in any of the other courses and classes and retreats, I teach these different positions for you to be able to learn. The seated position is a common position that people are learning in, and they're kind of developing their practice because it's really accessible and you can pretty much use this in just about any environment, where people are either sitting on the floor, or maybe you're in a chair, on a bench, or a sofa, or a wheelchair. You can really sit however you're comfortable. I'm going to share some suggestions with you, but it's just recommendations for you to consider. You can really sit however you like because there's not just one fixed way to actually sit during meditation. So if you're on the floor, you might have some cushions under your rear. This will kind of help soften your seat a bit. And if you're going to bring your legs together in the cross leg position, you might just choose to do that lightly. Whereas if they're real tight, it can impede the circulation and can cause pain in the lower body. Sometimes people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets your hips up in the air and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, allowing the circulation to flow. So you might try that as well. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If this is comfortable for you, you could use it, but it's not about everyone doing it exactly the same way. There's other options here as well. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or their knees. Some people put their palms up. Some people rest their hands comfortably in their lap. So you can put your hands and arms wherever you like. And the same thing's true for anyone who's on a sofa or a bench or a wheelchair or any kind of chair whatsoever. You can also sit however you like. Some people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly cross at the ankles, but you can see me sitting in a chair with my legs crossed, so this is an option too. And then you can put your hands and arms wherever you like. So you just sit however you're comfortable. There's not just one fixed way to do it. In terms of your upper body, it's helpful if this is erect, with the sternum up and the shoulders back. It'll help keep the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. Because if you're slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you're real rigid, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be in the middle with the sternum up and the shoulders back, because not only will it keep the mind attentive and alert, but it'll make it easy for you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. Meditation is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities from the mind and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities in the mind. So you need the mind to be attentive and alert during the meditation. So having the sternum up and the shoulders back will help you to keep the mind attentive and alert so you can actively train it. So again, I'm going to ease us into meditation with some chanting, which you guys are welcome to join in on. And then I'll come back in with the guidance afterwards. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa พุทธังมหาเขวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสรังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect. Just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath, not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาโอตังมหาเขวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวัตตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวัตโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสคาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสรังปุตโตภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you. Welcome to everyone here at the temple. Welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. As I was sharing, today is our group learning program where each Sunday I get together with students, helping them to understand the path to enlightenment. We use this book as our guide for this particular program. It's a 7-month program where we gradually walk students through this book, and you can actually get it for free. You can download it from our website. You can take it and go print it. You can get printed versions here by just reimbursing us for the printing cost, or you can order it on Amazon if you have access to Amazon in your country. So what I help students to be able to do is understand this enlightened mental state that the Buddha taught and how to actually attain. And then through you learning, growing, and developing on the path, you'll be able to experience more and more of these qualities and potentially attain enlightenment yourself. And now we're in chapter 13, which is titled Identifying Cravings, Cultivating Non-Craving and Analysis of the Mind. This is where you actually learn how to go in and almost surgically remove the causes and conditions that are producing the discontent feelings. What enlightenment is where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. By the time you get to enlightenment, you will no longer experience any discontent feelings. You will have eliminated all the anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All these feelings in others are eliminated from the enlightened mind. Oftentimes people think that it's other people that are causing you to experience anger and frustration and these other feelings, but this just isn't true. It's actually being caused by what's going on in your own mind. This is part of the lack of wisdom that the unenlightened mind has, is it firmly believes that other people are causing you to be angry or frustrated or annoyed or some other discontent feeling. But you can see through the original teachings of the Buddha in a way that you can independently verify that it's actually something called craving, desire, attachment attachment that's causing the mind to experience these feelings. And you can actually uproot this and get it out of the mind to the point where you're no longer experiencing those discontent feelings. By the time you uproot all the pollutions in the mind that the Buddha discovered, not only will you eliminate the discontent feelings, but you'll notice that the mind is focused. You'll have concentration, clarity, and deep memory because the mind's not polluted any longer and it's performing optimally. Where when you have these pollutions in the mind, you'll find it difficult to function in day-to-day life, where there will be a lack of focus, concentration, clarity, or memory. You'll notice that by the time you get to enlightenment, your personal and professional relationships are really blossoming. They'll be at ease because you're not being bitter and harsh and hostile any longer. In the unenlightened state, people have a tendency to be bitter and harsh and hostile in certain situations because the mind's craving and longing, yearning, and wanting things to be a certain way. And the mind gets angry when that actually the mind isn't getting what it wants. And when that anger is arising, the mind will falsely attribute its feelings to something external. And the mind thinks that if you're bitter, harsh, and hostile to this person, that it almost fears them into doing things your way, and then you get what you want. So you can uproot these out of the mind, these pollutions, and by the time you do, you won't even experience a bad mood. It's physically impossible for you to experience a bad mood by the time you get to enlightenment. So I've been teaching students in this program up to this point for about 3 months, 3.5 months, helping them to understand a lot of the foundational teachings that it takes to be able to get to enlightenment. But now around chapter 12, 13 of this book, it kind of pivots and starts to go in and talk about very specific things that you can actually do in addition to the general things that the Buddha taught in terms of the foundational teachings. But now the book kind of pivots and helps you to understand very specific things to go in. And today we're going to be going in and actually helping you to understand how to almost surgically remove some of these things like the cravings, desires, attachments, because it's no fun walking around with anger and frustration and fear and guilt and shame and stress and anxiety and all these other feelings. And you can actually go in and almost surgically remove these things that are causing these feelings. So I'm going to show you how to do that through our talk today. As we go, I'm going to pause a few times and open up for questions. You guys are welcome to ask any and all questions that you like, because that's part of the path to enlightenment, is getting clarification, because it's important that you don't believe anything that I'm sharing with you. Don't believe anything that I write in books. Don't believe anything I share with you in classes. Don't believe anything that anybody else teaches you about the teachings of the Buddha as well. The teachings of the Buddha aren't about a bunch of beliefs and then hoping something good happens when you die. That's not what his teachings are. His teachings are to learn, examine, and investigate his teachings, to understand them intellectually. Then you reflect on those teachings to independently verify if they're true or false. And then you practice his teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life in order to be able to train your mind. So this is how you actually cultivate wisdom, to be able to see the truth. And then as you're doing this, training on your mind, you'll see that in situations where you're once angry and frustrated and agitated and annoyed, that you're experiencing that same situation, but your mind's not experiencing those feelings anymore because you've uprooted the causes and conditions that are producing them. So as you have questions here at the temple, we have microphones in a white bowl over there by the bookshelves. If you just pick up a microphone over there, bring it back to your seat. If you press the gray button, you're going to see the lights come on, and then you can just hold it up to your chin and we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online. If you speak here without a microphone, we won't be able to hear you online. And then if you would like to keep this microphone with you, you can just keep it with you, because you might have more than one question, or someone around you might have a question, and you can just share the microphone. And then if you're not using it, if you could turn it off, that would be helpful so that we don't get feedback through the speakers. And then anybody who's online, if you guys would like to ask questions, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, and I'll be able to see that. Or if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and ask any and all questions that you like that way. So first, let me just share a few things, because some of you guys may not have been here when I was sharing the first part of this program, because I'm going to teach you how to go in and almost surgically remove these cravings, desires, attachments out of the mind. But first, you need to know, what is a craving, desire, attachment? This is where the mind is pulling towards the objects of its affection. This is where the mind has this unquenchable thirst, thinking that the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. This is where the mind chases chases and chases and chases and chases. There's certain wants and expectations that the mind has. And if the mind gets what it wants, it gets pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But if the mind doesn't get what it wants, it gets painful feelings like sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, things like this. And it can be very painful for the mind to experience these feelings because the mind's not getting what it wants. It has this craving for permanence. It's wanting things to be permanent. And if it gets what it wants, it gets those pleasant feelings. But if the mind doesn't get what it wants, it gets painful feelings. So if you've ever been in the mall and you notice your mind was like, oh, those new pair of shoes, I just can't wait to get those new pair of shoes. Oh, they're going to look so great on my feet. Or maybe it's a certain video game or new phone or new clothing or new jewelry or something like this. And your mind was pulling towards this thing, pulling towards the objects of your affection. That's the craving, desire, attachment, the way the mind longs and yearns for this thing. It's not the object itself. It's the way that the mind longs and yearns for the object. That's what the craving, desire, attachment is. And again, if the mind gets what it wants, it gets pleasant feelings. But if it doesn't, it gets the painful feelings. So if you get really excited about those new pair of shoes in the window at the store, if you go inside the store and they have your shoe size and you can purchase them, you'll be really happy and excited. But if you go inside and you can't get what you want, you'll be frustrated and agitated or annoyed. Or think about a boyfriend or girlfriend when maybe when you guys were together, you were really happy and excited about that. But when you guys broke up, you might have been angry or sad or frustrated or lonely or bored or missing this person. It wasn't your love that was causing this, because love is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. This doesn't cause painful feelings. What was causing the painful feelings when you guys broke up is the mind was holding on and craving permanence, wanting this person to be permanent in your life. That's what a craving, desire, attachment is, that the mind's holding on and wanting things to be permanent. But yet you live in an impermanent world where things are constantly changing. Here's some more simple examples. If you wake up in the morning and you see it's sunny outside and you get really excited about that, well, if you go take a shower and you come back and it's raining, you'll be frustrated or irritated or annoyed. The only thing that's happened here is change. That's it. It's just change. But the mind basing its inner feelings of happiness on the sun, and the sun is not permanent. This is why your happiness is not permanent. This is why you haven't been able to get to permanent happiness, because the unenlightened mind is basing its feelings on something that is impermanent. So if you get really excited when your bank account balance is up here, that means when it goes down here, you'll be sad or frustrated or annoyed. Again, the only thing that's happened is change, and the world is full of change. Everything around you is constantly changing, but the mind in the unenlightened state craves permanence. It has this longing, yearning, this wanting, this expecting, and it can only be happy when it gets what it wants. But you can't get what you want all the time because you live in an impermanent world. You're not always going to get what you want. So as long as this craving, desire, attachment is in the mind, and the mind's pulling towards the objects of its affection, the mind's going to keep experiencing frustration, agitation, or annoyance. The mind is being sabotaged to be able to continue to experience these feelings as long as this is allowed to stay in the mind. So the mind basically has these different conditions. If my mom and dad do this, if my boss does this, if my brothers and sisters do this, if the weather is this, if my bank account is this, if I have this kind of house and this kind of car, then I will be happy, right? So those types of things, all being true, shrinks your ability to be happy. It's sabotaging your ability to be happy because the mind is basing its inner feelings on something external. And all these external things are not permanent. This is why you can't experience permanent happiness in the unenlightened state, because the mind keeps forming its happiness based on some impermanent condition. And when you have a certain craving, desire, attachment in the mind, as I mentioned, you get happy when you get what you want or pleasant feelings. But when you don't get what you want, that's where the painful feelings are rising. And when those painful feelings are arising, the mind will tend to be unskillful, because it doesn't understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. The mind firmly believes that it's something external that is causing your painful feelings. So what the mind will tend to do is push people away or push a situation away. You might have pushed friends or family out of your life, thinking that that's going to solve the problem. But you can see that that didn't solve the problem because you still get annoyed, you still get frustrated. If they were the true cause of your problem, when you push them out of your life, you would be peaceful and joyful from that point forward because you've solved your problem. But that's not the true cause of what's creating the frustration or agitation or annoyance. This is called aversion, where you're pushing away the things that your mind is uncomfortable with. Then the second thing you might do when this painful feelings are arising, like anger, frustration, and others, is you might be bitter and harsh and hostile towards people through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. Because the mind feels justified in its conduct because it firmly believes that this person is causing you to be angry, and you might feel that you being bitter and harsh and hostile to them is a way of getting back at them, and you might feel justified in your conduct towards them, but you're just damaging your relationship in this situation. Or the third thing you might do is you might put your expectations on people and try to pressure them or control them to do things your way. And as long as you're doing this, you can't live harmoniously with all people, because it's only a matter of time, due to impermanence, that somebody's going to do something opposite of what it is that you want them to do. And then you're going to push them away, be bitter, harsh, and hostile, or put your expectations on them. And you're going to notice you have broken relationship after broken relationship after broken relationship. And people might actually be doing this with you too. You might see people pushing you away, being bitter, harsh, and hostile to you, or putting their expectations on you. So there's a better way of life here that the Buddha taught. The Buddha didn't teach rules and commandments. He didn't teach beliefs and opinions and views. It's about helping you to be able to see the truth about what's really truly occurring within your own mind and within the world around you, so that now you can transform your mind and transform your life to be able to experience the peace and joy, which is a permanent mental state. You can get to the point where you're living the ideal life now. The Buddha's teachings aren't about believing something and then hoping something good happens when you die. It's about training your mind now to get to the point where you're completely peaceful and joyful now. So understanding what craving, desire, attachment is really important, because this is where the mind is sabotaging its ability to be peaceful and joyful permanently, because you can only be happy when you get what you want, as long as this is in the mind. And you don't have to feel bad about the fact that the mind is experiencing this, because every single being that was ever born was experiencing exactly the same thing. The Buddha figured out how this is working within one's own mind and figured out how to resolve it and eliminate it out of the mind. So by eliminating this out of the mind, that's where the peace and joy comes in. This craving, desire, attachment is the cause of the problems in the unenlightened mind, the discontentedness that the mind's experiencing. That's the cause, is this craving, desire, attachment. And as long as there's craving, desire, attachment in the mind, there's going to be anger that comes up in the mind. And that's where the bitterness and harshness and hostility comes from. This is the first of what we call the three poisons, or the three unwholesome roots, or the three fires. It's called craving, anger, and ignorance. This is a high-level description from the Buddha of what's plaguing the mind and keeping it in the unenlightened state, that there's these cravings, and if the mind gets what it wants, it gets pleasant feelings. If it doesn't get what it wants, it gets those painful feelings. And then when that anger is arising, an individual will push away, be bitter, harsh, and hostile, or put expectations on people. And where this is all coming from is what is referred to as ignorance. But a better way to think about this is the unknowing of true reality, or the lack of wisdom, or the confusion, or the misunderstanding that the mind has. That because the mind has this lack of wisdom, it continues to crave and it continues to have anger. That the mind has these beliefs, has these false opinions and views, that it just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. It has misunderstanding and confusion in the mind. So while we call it craving, anger, and ignorance, it's really because of this ignorance, or this unknowing of true reality, this lack of wisdom that the mind has, that craving and anger continues to exist in the mind. And the way to fix this is to arise wisdom. And that's why you don't believe any of the teachings of the Buddha, because you need wisdom of how to eliminate craving and anger. That's what you're learning on the path to enlightenment, is how to eliminate this craving and anger by arising the wisdom of how to do so. So that's what I've been teaching so far, is the Eightfold Path, because that's the core central teaching that's going to help you to be able to learn how to eliminate these pollutions. But then there's things you can do to go in and almost surgically remove the craving, desire attachments, because not only is it causing these discontent feelings, but this is the cause of rebirth as well. Now, the teachings of the Buddha can be independently verified, including the cycle of rebirth. You might not have the wisdom right now to understand how to independently verify this continuous cycle of rebirth, but there's wisdom for you to be able to cultivate in this area if that's something that you're interested in learning how to do. Right now, you might be believing that you only have one life, but you don't have any evidence that you only have one life. Right now, you might not be able to remember your previous lives, but as you're training your mind and you're eliminating this pollution out of your mind, there's the potential that you might actually observe and have memories of your past lives, or you might even already had those memories and just didn't realize that's what was occurring. So you can actually cultivate the wisdom to be able to independently verify this continuous cycle. So if there's craving, desire, attachment in the mind, not only is it causing discontent feelings, but if you have that by the time the end of this life, then it's going to be the causing condition that produces the next life. The Buddha calls this the fuel that causes rebirth. So craving, desire, attachment is like a spark. If you look at a fire and you had logs on a fire and there was a spark that was carried by the wind and it landed and ignited a new fire, it's the fuel on this fire that produced the spark that led to this new fire. So craving, desire, attachment is the fuel that leads to the spark that produces the next fire or the next mind, right? So by eliminating craving, desire, attachment, not only do you get to the point where the mind's no longer experiencing any discontent feelings, but you're not going to experience continuous rebirth coming back into the world over and over and over again. So this is a primary focus on the path to enlightenment, is to eliminate craving, desire, attachment, and gaining the wisdom of how to do that. So it's a number one goal in terms of how to purify your mind, is getting rid of this craving, desire, attachment. And of course, you need wisdom to be able to do that. But how could you ever eliminate cravings, desires, attachments if you didn't know how to identify them? So that's what I'm going to teach you today, is how to identify your cravings, desires, attachments, and then how to surgically remove them from the mind so you can eliminate things like fear and anger and frustration and guilt and shame and stress and anxiety and all these other feelings. So in addition to meditation, identifying your cravings, desires, attachments when the mind's longing, yearning, and chasing after things, this is probably the second most important skill you could have. Meditation is very important, and you're going to need to be able to develop that practice, but developing this ability is really important. It's the second most important thing that you could do, is to be able to see and identify what are your cravings, desires, attachments, because the mind lacks wisdom about what this is and how to actually do it. Breathing mindfulness meditation is training your mind to let go. That's the meditation we just did. When we are focused on the breath and the mind moves off the breath and you let go and you come back to the breath, that's what's helping the mind to learn how to let go. Because what craving, desire, attachment does is the mind holds on. It's craving permanence and wanting things to be a certain way. The mind doesn't know how to let go. That's why when you broke up with that boyfriend or girlfriend, you were lonely or bored, or you were missing that person or angry for a period of time because you were holding on and wanting that person to be permanent. But then at some point your mind let go. And then when you let go, that's where your peace and your joy came back. So the mind doesn't know how to let go. And that's what this meditation is for. This meditation isn't to train your mind to eliminate your thoughts. It's to train your mind to let go. Let go. So if 10, 15, 20 times during the meditation you had to let go, this is actually really helpful for your mind. So that's what the breathing mindfulness meditation is, so that you can develop this mindfulness or awareness of mind, so you can see in your day-to-day life that your mind is longing, yearning, right? When you're focused on the breath and the mind moves off the breath and you notice that, that's your mindfulness or awareness of mind. And in meditation, you're cutting off anything and everything that's coming up because you're training your mind to let go. But in your day-to-day life, you're only cutting off the unwholesome thoughts that come up. If you have a thought in your day-to-day life that you'd like to take your mom out to lunch or dinner or something like that, or some other friend or family member, sure, take them out to lunch. There's no harm in practicing generosity to take somebody out for lunch or dinner. But if you're thinking about punching your boss in the face, you should cut that off and let it go, right? Because that's going to produce unwholesome results for you, right? So in your meditation, you're cutting off anything and everything that's coming up. But in your day-to-day life, you're only cutting off the unwholesome things that are coming up. This is the training versus what you're doing in your day-to-day life. It's very similar to a professional athlete. If I was a professional pole vaulter, I would go in the gym and I would do weight training, agility training, cardiovascular training. It would look very different than the sport of pole vaulting. So when you're in the gym, you're actually training in one way versus your professional sport. So the same thing is true about meditation. It's like exercising the mind. It's like taking the mind to the gym and you're exercising it in one particular way to build qualities that you can then use in your day-to-day life. So in your meditation, you're cutting off everything and anything that's coming up so that you can develop this mindfulness and concentration and the ability to let go. So that now in your day-to-day life, when you're noticing the unwholesome thoughts arising, you can cut off and let go. And your generosity is helping you to be able to do that as well, where you're practicing the giving and sharing of more than is strictly required in any given situation without any expectation of anything in return. You're going to need to give and share with the people around you to train your mind to let go. Because right now you're probably holding on to certain things and you're unwilling to share that with other people. This is what the mind does when it has craving, desire, attachment, that it tends to hold on to things very tightly, much like an animal. We're not animals, we're human beings. But in the unenlightened state, the mind functions very much like an animal. Just like an animal hoards food or it hoards resources and it doesn't want to share. This is the way the human mind can become in the unenlightened state. We're oftentimes taught as a child to share our toys and things like this, but we forget about that as we age because we don't understand the reason why that was taught to us. The reason why that was taught to us is because the mind needs to learn how to let go and give and share with the people around you. But what the unenlightened mind will tend to do is it'll think, if I spend 3 hours doing this, I want this in return. Or if I spend 3 days doing this, I want this in return. It's always about wanting something for yourself rather than sharing with other people, living open-handedly and being joyful to share with others. So the Buddha teaches generosity to help you train your mind to let go and be joyful in sharing with others. But you need to be able to do this without any expectation of anything in return. If you're practicing sharing with an expectation of something to get back from that person, your mind hasn't actually let go. You still have something that you're craving or desiring from that person. So if you're walking in the door of a store and you're holding the door for that person and you're standing there with an expectation that they will say thank you to you, when they walk in through the door and they don't say thank you, you'll be frustrated or agitated or annoyed. This is your own mind that's causing that because the mind is craving or expecting everyone who walks through this door should say thank you. That's the permanence that the mind's craving. Not everybody's going to say thank you when they walk through the door. Otherwise, that would be permanence. And we live in an impermanent world where some people are going to say thank you when they walk through the door and other people aren't. Maybe you say thank you when you walk through the door, but other people aren't even going to see you standing there. So if you're only holding the door because you want a thank you, your mind isn't practicing pure generosity. You still have an expectation of something you want from this person. So to free your mind, you get to the point where you're holding the door because you understand you're practicing generosity and you're enhancing the quality of your mind. And now you don't want anything from this person. So if they say thank you, fine, you're welcome, pleased to help you. But if someone walks through and they don't say thank you, you can still be peaceful and joyful because you didn't want anything from this person. So you're going to need to practice generosity to also train your mind to let go. These types of teachings and others are found in the Eightfold Path because the Eightfold Path is the core central teaching that is guiding you to train the mind to eliminate all cravings, desires, attachments. But once you've got that well underway, which is what I've taught at the beginning of this program and some other things as well, you move on to understanding what I'm going to teach you today, which is using these discontent feelings like a red light on the dashboard of your car. If you were driving a car and the red light came on the dashboard, you would probably pull that car over and try to figure out what's wrong with it. You wouldn't keep driving that car. And if you had skills to be able to address this, you'd probably pop the hood and start looking under the hood to figure out what's wrong with the car. But if you didn't have the skills of how to do that, you'd probably take your car into the shop and ask an auto mechanic to be able to help you, to be able to address this problem. Well, these feelings that you have, like anger, sadness, frustration, anxiety, stress, guilt, shame, fear, all these other feelings, this is a red light on the dashboard of your car, alerting you that, hey, you have some cravings, desires, attachments in your mind. You need to pull over and start looking inward and start reflecting to figure out what are your cravings, desires, attachments here. If you just go through life believing that it's other people who are causing you to be angry and sad and frustrated and all these other discontent feelings, you'll just continue to be angry, sad, and frustrated the rest of your life because you're not actually addressing the true problem, which is the craving, desire, attachment. So it would be wise for you to get this skill to be able to pull over and start looking inward and start reflecting. What is your mind longing, yearning for? What is the mind craving to be permanent? And if you can uncover what that is, then there's ways to go in and surgically remove these out of the mind so that you can experience the peace and the joy. And just like with the car, if you didn't have the skills of how to figure out what is your cravings, desires, attachments, or you didn't know how to fix your car, you would take your car to the auto mechanic. The same thing is true with your mind. In this scenario, the auto mechanic is your teacher. You're going to need a teacher to help you on the path to enlightenment. Only a Buddha would be able to get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. You're going to need someone to help you and guide you. But you need to develop the skill to be able to look inward and figure out what are these cravings, desires, attachments. And if you do this enough, eventually you'll be able to figure them out for yourself. You won't need to keep going to the teacher every single time you have a craving, desire, attachment, because you'll have this really important skill to be able to analyze the mind and figure out what it is that's actually causing these feelings. So if you're developing this skill and you can't figure out what your cravings, desires, attachments are, you can visit a teacher, and a teacher will be able to help you look inward and reflect and figure out what is your mind longing, yearning for. Because a teacher can give you an indication of some of the things that are actually causing these or some of these cravings, desires, attachments, but it's only you that's going to be able to identify them 100%. Somebody else can't tell you 100% of what you're craving. That's why you need mindfulness or awareness of mind, and you need to be able to be introspective and look inward and reflect to see what are your cravings, desires, attachments. So you can use these discontent feelings like a red light on the dashboard of your car, alerting you, hey, you've got a real problem here. You need to fix this. And now you can pull over, be reflective, and figure out what your cravings, desires, attachments are. So I'm going to teach you this process and help you in sharing this with you of learning how to identify your cravings, desires, attachments. So I'm going to share with you guys this process that you can follow in order to be able to surgically remove these cravings, desires, attachments out of your mind. So this first step, if you're using discontentedness as the red light, is that when discontentedness occurs, the first thing you would like to do is cut it off and let it go. This is taught in the Eightfold Path. That's why the Eightfold Path is so important. So if you're noticing either a conditioned pleasant feeling, a conditioned painful feeling, or a conditioned feeling that is neither painful nor pleasant, this is like shyness or uncomfortableness. You need to cut it off and let it go. You're cutting off and letting go the conditioned pleasant feelings, because with conditioned pleasant feelings, the mind can only be happy if it gets what it wants. What the Buddha is guiding you to be able to do is get to unconditioned happiness, unconditioned joy, where the mind can just be happy and joyful all the time. But if you continue to allow the mind to have conditioned pleasant feelings, that meaning you can only be happy if certain conditions are met, then you can't be happy permanently. It's not possible. So if you get so happy and excited when you get that brand new job, 3 years later, when the company goes out of business or you get laid off or you get fired, you'll be angry and frustrated because you allowed your mind to get the conditioned pleasant feeling based on the condition that you have this job. But that job is not permanent. So as soon as that job is over, you'll be angry or sad or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. So the Buddha is teaching you to eliminate conditioned pleasant feelings so that you can get to the point where your mind has unconditioned happiness, unconditioned joy, where it can always be happy and joyful, right? So you need to be able to see that the pleasant feelings are just as much a part of the problem as the painful ones, because it makes sense to cut off anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings, but the pleasant feelings are a problem also. So that you can now, if you eliminate that, where the mind's not forming its inner feelings based on some condition, now you can get to the point where it's always peaceful. So for example, if you can only be happy when it's sunny outside, then that means if there's anything else besides sun, you're frustrated or angry or irritated or annoyed. But what you would like to get to is where you can be happy when it's sunny outside, when it's raining outside, when it's snowing or sleeting, no matter what's going on, you can maintain your happiness and your joy. But if you can only be happy when your bank account balance is up here, then that means you're stuck, because when it goes down here, you can't be happy. So what the Buddha is teaching you to do is, yeah, you can be happy when your bank account balance is here, but you can also be happy when it's here and here and here and here and here. You can be happy all the time. That your feelings aren't based on the level of money in your bank account, because that would be what an unenlightened being is doing, is forming their feelings based on the level of their bank account. So whenever you're noticing discontentedness arising, you would like to cut it off and let it go as a bodily sensation, because there's 4 cycles or 4 things that are going to occur when your anger is arising. The first thing that's going to happen is there's going to be bodily sensations. You're going to notice tingling in the body, tightening in the chest, maybe tightening in the throat, heat in the face, pressure in the skull. This is the bodily sensations associated with the painful feeling of anger arising. And you may or may not be aware of those right now, but you're going to need to build this awareness of these bodily sensations that are occurring prior to your mind becoming discontent. Not only do you experience this in regards to painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant, but even the pleasant feelings have bodily sensations. They're usually like tingling across the shoulders, up the back of the neck, over the skull. Some people call this warm fuzzies, and they're like, wow, that feels so good. They really like that feeling, right? But if you allow your mind to go past those bodily sensations, the mind's then going to form a feeling. Because when that anger is arising, if you don't cut it off and let it go as a bodily sensation, the mind's then going to form a feeling. This is the conditioned feeling that the mind is having. But what the Buddha is teaching you to be able to do is, at the bodily sensations, cut it off and let it go. The bodily sensations are the early warning system alerting you that you're about to become angry. You're about to become frustrated. And you have some time there to be able to cut off and let go. You're not suppressing your feelings or repressing your feelings. You're actually cutting them off and letting them go before it becomes a feeling. And if you cut it off and let it go before it becomes a feeling, you've just protected the mind. Essentially, if you were taking a boat from, say, the UK to Australia, right? If you were traveling in the middle of this sea, you would like to prevent the water from ever coming into the boat. Because once the water gets into the boat, you've got a real problem to deal with. You got to get this water out of the boat. So you prevent the water from ever coming into the boat. The same thing is true about these discontent feelings, that you would like to prevent them from ever coming into the mind, because once they come into the mind, you've got a real problem to deal with. So the bodily sensations are an early warning system alerting you that you're about to experience a conditioned feeling. Those bodily sensations are like the mind saying, I'm about to form a conditioned feeling. I'm about to form a conditioned feeling. I'm about to form a conditioned feeling. And what you do is you say, nope, not going to let you do that. You apply effort to cut that off and let it go. You say, nope, not going to let you do that. You restrain the mind and you pull it back, because that craving, desire, attachment is longing and yearning. Oh my goodness, look at those new shoes. I can't wait to get those new shoes. Oh, they're going to look so good on my feet. Nope, you pull your mind back. You restrain it, There's no problem with purchasing shoes. You need shoes. But when your mind's longing, yearning, and trying to form its feelings based on whether you get those shoes or not, that's your mind trying to form a conditioned feeling. So you'd like to restrain the mind from being able to do that. If you miss it as a bodily sensation, it's going to become a feeling. You can cut it off there too. But if you miss it there as a feeling, it's going to then affect the condition of your mind. This is where you might have been grumpy or irritable for like a couple of hours or a couple of days or a week or two. Do you remember this? Where you were grumpy or irritable or frustrated for a few hours, a few days, or a week or two? You were probably blaming other people for the feelings that you're experiencing, but it was your own mind that was causing this. You didn't know to cut it off as a bodily sensation. You didn't know to cut it off as a feeling. So it affected the mind more long term. This is the third foundation of mindfulness. Then if you don't cut it off as a condition of the mind, it's going to feed a mental object, which is a deeply rooted container in the mind. So the way that this looks in day-to-day life, where you're cutting off and letting go, is, let's just say you're watching the news and you're noticing some tingling in the body, tightening in the chest, tightening in the throat, heat in the face. You know anger is about to arise because you're watching the news. Instead of just sitting there and dwelling in that and allowing the mind to experience the conditioned painful feeling, which you know is going to come next, you cut that off and let it go by redirecting the mind. Turn off the news, get up and take a bike ride, go for a walk, go to the kitchen and get a glass of water. You need to redirect the mind towards something else. Because if you sit there and you keep watching the news, you're just going to allow the mind to form the conditioned feeling. So you would like to cut it off and let it go. That's what this first step is showing you, is to cut off and let go of your discontent feelings when they're arising as just a bodily sensation. Now, once you've cut off and let go, and the mind is calm and peaceful, which can take a couple of minutes, a couple of hours, depending on how well your mind's trained, it might even take a couple of days to cut off and let go, then you'd like to move to the second part, where you start reflecting, looking inward, and trying to figure out, what is the mind longing, yearning for? It's wanting something to be permanent. What is it? What is the mind craving, desiring? What is it wanting and expecting? And you start looking inward and being reflective and introspective. And then if you figure that out, wonderful. If not, that's where you need to go get help from your teacher, right? But you like to reflect inwards and be able to figure out, what is your mind longing, yearning for? Then you'd like to develop a specific plan to go in and surgically remove this craving, desire, attachment from the mind. Of course, you'd like to keep breathing mindfulness, meditation, and generosity well underway, because that's your consistent long-term training that you're always doing throughout your day. But you're going to need to put a plan together to go in and surgically remove these cravings, desires, attachments. And I'm going to give you some examples so you can see what I mean by this. Then repeat this process as needed each time you experience discontentedness. Each time this red light is flashing for you and you're getting angry or frustrated or irritated or annoyed or any of these other discontent feelings, you repeat the process. You cut off and let go as a bodily sensation. You reflect and look inward and figure out, what is the mind longing, yearning for, and where you need help, you get help from a teacher. Then you develop a plan to be able to address that. So let me give you some examples so you understand what this looks like in day-to-day life. There was a time where I left my house and I accidentally left my mobile phone at home. And I was at a stoplight about 5 minutes away from my house, and I reached down for my mobile phone and it wasn't there. And right away I noticed this fear coming up into the mind, right? And the first thing the mind wanted to do is turn around and go get the phone. Right? The mind thought that that was going to solve the problem, but that doesn't solve the problem, because what's happening here is the mind's craving that phone to be permanent, and this mobile phone is not permanent. So what I did first is I cut off and let go of that fear. Cut it off and let it go, and cut it off and let it go, and cut it off and let it go, right? And I happened to be sitting at a red light, right? So I used that fear as a red light to alert me, hey, you've got a craving, desire, attachment here. And turning around and going home isn't going to help you. So I just cut off and let go, cut off and let go, and cut off and let go. Then the second step, I started reflecting. I was like, what's going on here? Why is the mind experiencing this fear? It's craving the phone to be permanent. It's longing, yearning, and expecting for it to be permanent when this phone is not permanent. So then I moved to the third step, and I started developing a plan of how to solve this while I was sitting at this red light. So instead of turning around and going to get the phone, I decided to stay outside without this phone. I was only supposed to be outside for about an hour and a half. I just had a few things to do. But instead, I decided to extend my amount of time to be outside. I went and got something to eat. I went to the movies. I did a little bit of walking around the mall. I was outside for like 5 or 6 hours that day. And then when I went home, I didn't just go run to see the phone and see what was going on with the phone. I just left it where it was at. And I went and did something else. And then 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours later, I went and looked at the phone and saw what was going on, and I addressed the phone. Right? So this was the first part. But then knowing that my mind had this craving and I had this fear and I was trying to distance myself from the phone, then I waited 2 or 3 days and I did it again. I did it intentionally. I left the phone at home and I went outside without the phone. And it felt awkward and it felt weird to be outside without the phone, but there was no fear. It just felt awkward and weird. So the discontentedness had dropped. There was still some craving there. That's why that awkwardness was in the mind. Otherwise, that wouldn't have been in there. So there was still some craving in there. So I went outside again for 5, 6 hours or so. And then when I came home, I didn't go to the phone right away. I just let it be where it was at. 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours later, I went and checked the phone. So then I waited another 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 days, and then I did it again. And I left the phone at home, and I went outside. No fear, no awkwardness, no uncomfortableness. Felt completely fine being outside without the phone. And I was like, wow, this is great. I must have let go of this attachment. Then about, I would say 2 months later, I accidentally left the phone at home again. I was driving down the road and I reached for the phone and it wasn't there. And I was like, oh, well, and I just kept driving, right? Where before there was this fear and there was this awkwardness in the mind. But now, noticing that the phone wasn't there, I was like, oh, well, no big deal. And I just kept on going, and the mind could maintain its joy. Where before I couldn't do that because the mind was craving this permanence and it had this fear and this awkwardness in the mind. Then about a year after that, I accidentally dropped the phone on the floor and the screen shattered. And I picked it up and I looked at it and I started laughing and smiling. And I was like, yeah, of course, because the phone's impermanent, right? And fortunately, my wife had another one that I could just use this spare phone that she had. So I could see that the mind was no longer attached to this phone, where before my feelings were attached to whether I had the phone or not. If I had the phone, I was comfortable. But if I didn't have the phone, I was fearful, right? So many of us have these phones, and there's a good chance that you're actually attached to your phone. So this is the way that you would like to do it, is leave it at home sometimes and go outside without the phone. Over a consistent period of time, you can develop to the point where your mind's no longer craving for this phone to be permanent, and you can see that it is impermanent, and you've trained your mind to be just as comfortable going outside with the phone as going outside without the phone. Because right now, if you regularly go outside with the phone, your mind might be attached to it. So you need to be able to test the mind to be able to see this. So this is a certain example that I can help you to be able to understand this process of how to train your mind to gradually put it in a situation where it doesn't want to be in. Because there's certain things right now that your mind's having pleasant feelings from. You're getting conditioned pleasant feelings from it. A mobile phone might be a good example of that. And if there's something that your mind's holding on to that you're getting pleasant feelings from, you're going to need to distance yourself from this object in training your mind to be able to go around in the world without that thing. But then over time, as your mind lets that go, you'll be able to reintegrate that thing back into your life, like a mobile phone. There's no harm in having a mobile phone. It's just that if your mind's attached to it, you can only be happy when you have it. So anything you're getting pleasant feelings from, you're going to need to distance your mind from it, train your mind to let it go, and then ultimately you might start using that thing again, and now you can be happy whether you have that thing or not. If there's anything that your mind's pushing away because you experience painful feelings from it, you're going to need to include that thing in your life in order to expose your mind to it, to be able to train your mind to let go of its craving, desire, attachment. So let me give you an example of this one, because the first example was there was pleasant feelings and I needed to distance the mind from it in order to train the mind to let it go. And then once the mind let it go, then I was able to reintegrate that thing back in. But if there's something you're pushing away, let's just say you're afraid of large crowds and you don't want to be around large crowds and you have stress and anxiety when you're around a large crowd. You're not going to eliminate that stress and anxiety by never going around a large crowd, because you're going to eventually be around a large crowd at some point, at an airport, or maybe you're walking through a major city and you turn right and all of a sudden you're in the middle of a political protest or something like this. You never know what's going to happen. So just trying to avoid this situation and pushing it away doesn't actually solve the true problem, which is the craving, desire, attachment in the mind. So in this situation where your mind's pushing something away because you have painful feelings, you're going to need to integrate that thing into your life and actually do that thing, like go around large crowds. Let me give you another example. I used to not like durian fruit. I don't know if you guys have been around durian fruit. For me, I think it smells like poop. And if you eat it, I think it has the consistency of poop. I've never had poop in my mouth before, but I think that if I did, it would be just like this fruit, right? I used to taste this fruit and I was averse to it. I used to push it away, right? So I noticed that there was discontentedness, so I needed to cut that off and let it go, cut that off and let it go. And then I had to look inwards and reflect, what is the mind longing, yearning for here? There was a certain smell, certain taste, certain consistency that I was craving to be permanent. And I was averse to this durian fruit and trying to push it away. But instead, I put together this plan to be able to expose my mind to this durian fruit. And because I wasn't able to do it with the fruit itself, I went to something kind of halfway. I started eating cakes, snack cakes, because obviously I like snack cakes, right? And there was these snack cakes that had durian fruit in it. So I would eat these snack cakes, and I started liking eating these snack cakes with durian fruit. And I did that for a certain period of time. And then ultimately, once I did that for a period of time and got used to that, then I started eating the actual fruit and got completely comfortable eating this fruit. Right? So this is a process that you can repeat over and over and over. It's basically like a methodology or best practices that you can employ. So what I'm going to do is pause here. Let's see if you guys have any questions, and then I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to have this group activity. In fact, I'll just introduce it now, so that if during the question period you would like to participate in this group activity, I will help you to develop this skill to be able to look inward and figure out what your cravings, desires, attachments are, and then put together a plan to be able to help you. So if you have certain situations where your mind's been discontent, where you've either experienced conditioned pleasant feelings, painful feelings, or neither painful nor pleasant feelings, you can look at those situations now. Maybe in the past, you were trying to blame other people for the feelings that you were experiencing. But what you can do now is you can start looking inward and figure out what it is that your mind was longing and yearning for. And for about 80 or 90% of the situations, you can actually put together a plan that's going to help you to be able to distance yourself from it, or you're going to be able to include it in your life and be able to expose the mind to this to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments. So if you guys have questions about anything that I've shared in terms of teaching, or if you would like to participate in this group activity, you can say, hey, David, here's the discontentedness that I experience. Here's the situation. Here's what I think I'm longing, yearning for. And here's the type of plan that I would propose that would potentially be helpful in this situation. You can do that if you like. Or you might just say, here's the situation and I have no idea what I'm craving and desiring. Can you help me figure this out? Or help me put together a plan. So you can ask me questions about anything I've shared, or if you'd like to get help to develop this skill, you can do that as well. So if you guys have questions here, we have microphones back there by the bookshelf. All you need to do is go get some microphones. Looks like some of you guys might be interested. Yeah, back there by the bookshelf, you'll see the microphones. And then for those of you guys online, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section. Or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and then ask any and all questions that you like. So I'm not sure who's first, who's second. You guys feel free to decide for yourself. You like to go? Yeah, go for it. You just need to press the gray button on there.
So I have a question about when you talk about cutting off the feelings, when you're observe some kind of feelings arises, and how is it different from being an unfeeling person, being indifferent to what's happening with the people around you, or with like the terrible things happening in the world?
Yeah, so oftentimes people think feelings and emotions determine whether you care about something or not. This is actually not true, because it's not the feelings and it's not care that's causing the feelings and emotion. It's not your care that's causing that. What's causing it is your craving, desire, attachment, the mind's longing, wanting things to be permanent. So for example, if a war breaks out and you became upset or angry or frustrated, that's because the mind's craving for the world to be a certain way permanently. And it's not possible for the world to be that way permanently. That's not your care that's causing that. It's the mind longing, yearning, and craving permanence. But if you're all the way on the other side, which the unenlightened mind can see pretty clearly, where you're indifferent and you could care less about what's going on in the world, you're not going to be peaceful and joyful there either. So the Buddha is teaching you the middle way, where you can come to the middle, where you care and you have concern about what's going on in the world, but you're not forming your feelings based on what's going on in the world. That if there's a war, you understand that, okay, these people are choosing to fight. It's not your decision that those people chose to fight, and you didn't start it, so you're not the one that can stop it. Right? It's those people that need to decide for themselves to stop fighting, right? So you can have care and concern for this group of people while understanding that it's not possible for you to fix that thing, that it's up to them to choose to fix it. And you don't need to be angry or frustrated or agitated or annoyed or any of these other feelings, because that's just getting in your way of making wise decisions, because that's shaking up your mind. It's causing your mind to be shaken up. So if you're craving, desiring, attached, your emotions are going to be attached to this situation of whether there's certain things that are happening in the world or not. But if you swing all the way to the other side, where you could care less about what's going on in the world, you're not going to be peaceful and joyful there either. So it's the middle way, where you understand that each thing that person is experiencing is based on their decisions. It's not based on your decisions. And you can maintain your peace and joy because you understand you didn't cause that and you can't fix that. Those people need to fix it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Other questions?
About cutting off bodily sensations. So I imagine it might be difficult to cut off the bodily sensations. So how I understand this, and please correct me if I understand it right, that I notice the bodily sensation and then just don't, it's an alert for me, because, if I'm excited, I will feel like tingling or something, similar, but it's just difficult. I don't know how to cut off the bodily sensation, like the feeling. I can notice and I can say, okay, it's here, and I just don't follow it, right? It just, I'm not sure how to cut off the bodily sensation.
Okay, so what we're talking about is the 4 foundations of mindfulness, that the mind needs to gain awareness of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and then ultimately the mental objects, which are the deeply rooted containers in the mind, like the fetters, those pollutions, right? So early in your practice, most people aren't aware of these 4 things, because you need to develop it. You need to mature the mind. You need to cultivate the mind. And that's where the Eightfold Path comes in. That's why I mentioned that. And that's why I taught that at the beginning of the program, because that needs to be well developed to develop your mindfulness. That's where the breathing mindfulness meditation comes in, your generosity, practicing mindfulness in your day-to-day life. This is something that is cultivated, and it oftentimes can take multiple years just to be able to cultivate that, because it took the Buddha 6 years to get to enlightenment. It's not instantaneous. I've seen some people that are able to develop this within 6 months to a year, but you shouldn't use that as a benchmark, because everybody's different, right? You can't really say that everybody will cultivate it at a certain time, because I've seen some people that are studying with me for 3-4 years and they still haven't cultivated the 4 foundations of mindfulness yet, because everybody's in their own journey. Everybody's in a different place, but it is going to take you some time to mature the mind and cultivate it and get to the point where you do notice the bodily sensations every single time, and you're able to cut off and let go there. By the time you get to that point, you're about 1 to 3 years away from enlightenment. So it's going to take you some time to even get to that point. It's in the fourth jhana, if you remember the jhanas, the 4 phases that the mind goes through before you get to the first stage of enlightenment. It's in the 4th jhana that an individual fully has cultivated the 4 foundations of mindfulness at that point, that they're fully aware of those things. And now having the ability to cut off and let go is something that the mind then needs to be able to accomplish. So it's going to take you some time. And the fact that you don't have that right now is okay, but just understand what the goal is and then just gradually work towards it with your breathing mindfulness meditation, your generosity, and all the other factors of the Eightfold Path to gradually be working towards being aware of those 4 foundations and being able to take action to cut off, using right effort to cut that off and let it go.
I realize, but I just don't know. I can imagine that you can, like if it's a body, like if you're scared and you're shaking, I think it's very difficult to stop shaking, It's just like, I think what you're meaning, this is how I understand, is just to realize, that this is an alert for me, because this is what I can do, but I don't know if I can stop shaking when I'm afraid, So like, this is what I'm meaning. Like, I think I can realize, oh, it shows me I'm scared.
Yeah. So once the body's shaking, like you're talking about, the mind has already formed the conditioned feeling, and it's a lot more challenging to cut it off there. That's why the Buddha is teaching you to cut it off as a bodily sensation. It's a lot easier to cut it off there. But the mind doesn't have that level of awareness when it's first getting started. It doesn't have the maturity and the development to be able to cut off and let go as a bodily sensation. So oftentimes it will become a feeling. Even when you're in the first, second, and even the 3rd stage of enlightenment, you're still going to have some conditioned feelings. It's going to happen. It's not until the mind's enlightened in the 4th stage where you're not experiencing any conditioned feelings. So you're still experiencing some conditioned feelings even in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd stage of enlightenment. But what you're doing is you're trying to get your arms around it, where you can more and more be vigilant and be aware of these arising bodily sensations and cut off and let go. The Buddha refers to this as maturing in release. That you need to mature the mind and mature the mind and mature the mind so that it would be willing to release these cravings, desires, attachments. So even though we say cut it off and let it go, it's really cut it off and 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 cut it off. And finally, after many months and maybe even years with some of these cravings, the mind will let go, right? So this example I gave with the phone, I could see over a number of weeks that my mind had let that go, because that was a very minimal craving, right? Because you have this spectrum of cravings. We call it craving, desire, attachment, wants, and expectations, but there's really a spectrum here. There's very little light ones, but then there's very deeply rooted ones, like your attachment to your daughter, right? That's going to be a very challenging one. It's going to take multiple years to let go of. But if you wanted a bag of M&Ms and you went into 7-Eleven and they didn't have your M&Ms and you felt a little bit of irritation, you can cut that off pretty easily because it's a lighter craving. So what you do is you work with the mind skillfully to be able to learn how to let go of some of these lighter cravings so that then it prepares it to be able to let go of some of these stronger ones that you're going to need to deal with later on. Any other questions? Oh, yes, sir.
We are talking about craving, desire, and attachment as being the source of suffering, isn't it?
I don't use the word suffering. I use the word discontentedness because the word suffering relates to those painful feelings really well, but you need to be able to understand the full problem here that the Buddha discovered, which is also the conditioned pleasant feelings and the neither painful nor pleasant feelings, like uncomfortableness and displeasure. So you need to be able to see all 3 of these types of feelings as being part of the problem, because if you're only addressing the suffering or the painful feelings, you're not actually going to be able to solve the entire problem. If you allow your mind to get the conditioned pleasant feelings, the painful ones are waiting right around the corner for you. So you need to be able to see the full spectrum of feelings and emotions that the unenlightened mind experiences, and that's going to bring your mind to fully understand what you need to be doing on a day-to-day basis. So I use the word discontent, discontented, or discontentedness rather than the word suffering.
The heart of my question is to know the difference between craving and desire. I see pretty much similarity in these two.
It's the same thing. It's the mind longing, yearning, chasing after the objects of your affection, forming its feelings on whether you get this thing or not. If you get this thing, the mind will be happy and excited, but if it doesn't, it gets angry and frustrated, irritated, or annoyed. So craving, desire, attachment, wants, expectations, this is the same way of describing that aspect of the mind where it's longing, yearning, craving permanence, desiring permanence.
And where do we put ignorance and aversions in the source of discontentment?
So what I was talking about with the three poisons or the three unwholesome roots, this is craving, anger, and ignorance, or some people use the word aversion because it's the mind's pushing away. It's because of the ignorance or the unknowing of true reality, the lack of wisdom, that the mind continues to crave and long and yearn. And then as long as there's craving in the mind, you're going to have anger and aversion, pushing away. So these three things are a high-level way of describing the pollutions of the mind, where the 10 fetters are the more detailed description. Any other questions? We have a question here online. If you guys don't have any here, Chris is asking, if I'm averse to being around people who are angry at me or speak harshly to me, is it beneficial to expose the mind to people who are angry and harsh speech? The answer is yes. You're going to experience that. Even when you're enlightened, you're going to experience the occasional person who's bitter, angry, and harsh and hostile. By the time you get to enlightenment, 99.99999% of the time when you're interacting with people, you'll experience that people are being very loving and kind and warm and gentle to you. But there's going to be a rare situation where people are going to be bitter and harsh and hostile with you. So on your way to enlightenment, you're going to still be experiencing people who are bitter and harsh and hostile with you. And you're going to need to train your mind to have loving kindness and compassion for this person and not to form your feelings based on what they're choosing to do. Because what the mind's doing is it's craving permanence. I want everybody to talk to me in this way. And when they talk to me in this way, I will be happy. But when they talk to me in this way, I'm going to be angry or frustrated. That's the craving, desire, attachment, the craving for permanence. But you live in an impermanent world where some people are going to be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, but other people are going to be bitter and harsh and hostile. And if you form your feelings based on what other people are choosing to do, you can't be permanently peaceful and joyful. So since you've looked inward, you've already gone through this process. Let me just back up here, Chris. You've already gone through this process that you know you have discontentedness and you're cutting that off and letting it go. You've reflected inward and you can see that you're craving for people to talk with you in a certain way. And now you're developing a plan to be able to figure out how is it that you're going to be able to expose your mind to this thing that it's averse to, because you experience painful feelings from it and you're trying to push it away. But what you would actually like to do is expose the mind to it. And this is one of those things that you're not going to have to actively go out and look for people who are angry and bitter and harsh, because you'll be around people who are that way. So naturally, your mind's going to be able to get exposure to this. So you can see here that this is going to help your mind to overcome it. By trying to avoid people or pushing these people away, you're not actually going to be able to overcome that, because you will be around people who are angry or frustrated at different times in your life. So yeah, you've got that exactly accurate, Chris. That's what you'd like to be doing. Okay, any other questions here? All right, I'm not seeing any other questions. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to end class by thanking all of you guys for joining. I really appreciate that you're interested to learn and grow and develop on the path. And I'd like to share something with you that we do once every 3 months here at our temple. That once every 3 months, we come together and we do what's called Temple Cleanup Day, where we all pitch in and we provide some help to the temple to be able to keep it nice and keep it clean. Essentially, the way a temple is it's like the womb of a woman. The womb of a woman is the very best place to learn and grow and develop, because as a human being, you can't become a human being without being inside the womb of a woman. And the womb of a woman is the very best place to be able to become a human being. And the temple is a similar way, that this is the way to grow and learn and develop into becoming a better and better human being. And a temple environment is created by all of us choosing that we would like to have this type of center in our community to be able to allow other people to benefit ourselves, but also other people as well to be able to benefit from that womb. So if you're interested in sticking around after class, every 3 months we come together and we do like a deep cleaning of the inside of the classroom and some of the things on the outside of the classroom as well. It would be a practice of generosity for you to do this. I don't expect you to do it. I don't want you to do it. I'm not longing, yearning for you to do it. But if you'd like to stick around and help out, you're more than welcome to. We're probably going to do some cleaning here inside, although somebody came in this morning and did a bunch of cleaning this morning, so there might not be very much cleaning inside to do. We might end up focusing more of our attention on the outside. If you'd like to stick around, just stick around after class and we'll talk about it some more when we get to that point. And if you do decide to stick around, I really appreciate your help to be able to contribute to the temple. And if you don't stick around, I really appreciate that you are here to be able to be interested to learn and practice the teachings of the Buddha. So thank you for your interest to do that and becoming a better and better person. If you'd like to learn some more, tonight at 6:30, I'm going to be leading a meditation in the main hall. If you're coming for the walking market, there's a shopping market that sets up today that pretty much takes over a lot of the city, that at 6:30 tonight, we're going to be doing meditation in the main hall. You guys are welcome to come for meditation. And then after the meditation, I just open up to whatever questions the students have about anything and everything that they would like to ask questions about. And then this evening at 9 p.m., the same class that I just taught here with you guys, I will teach it again here at 9 p.m. because I live stream throughout the world. And right now, the people in Europe are sleeping. So I teach it at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. so that no matter where you are in the world, you can tune in to a live class. And if you can't attend the live class, they're recorded on YouTube and Facebook and on our podcast. So you'll be able to actually learn from the recordings if you can't attend the live classes. So you're welcome to also come at 9 p.m. tonight if you'd like, because we'll do meditation and then I'll teach the same class again. But it's up to you whether you'd like to learn in that class or not, or maybe just come for the meditation. But these are all options for you to be able to continue to learn if you'd like. And then on Wednesday, we're going to be doing meditation together. I'll be guiding students in a loving kindness meditation session and then opening up to any questions that you guys have. So thank you again for coming to the temple. Thank you for your interest to learn and grow and develop. Perhaps I'll see you guys in one of these future classes. Have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Sawadee-ka.
Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.